You have this responsibility as an agency to show results and to validate your existence so that you can keep getting paid. And if you're not controlling the entire law firm's marketing funnel, that law firm owner is going to say, well, you're responsible for my website and my website metrics aren't improving. Welcome back to the Sterling Family Law Show. Today we are continuing our series on SEO. I have the pleasure of having Tony Carls, who is the co-founder of our very own family law firm, Sterling Lawyers, that has grown to over 27 attorneys. Today we are going to talk about the 5 ways to know if your SEO is actually working. You know, with the AI wave upon us, we've talked a lot about that. We've talked a lot about how to grow your law firm. And one thing that we have found very successful at Sterling is our ability to rank in SEO, to be able to drive leads from Google Maps into our firm. And so today we're going to continue that conversation. Tony, our first way to know if you're actually working and if your SEO is actually working is you're stuck in the vanity metrics trap. This is something that we talk about all the time. It's something that our clients, I think, get stuck in, and they care. Well, my impressions are going down, or my keyword density is different. Tell us why this is such a trap, and what firms should focus on instead.
Yeah, I think this is there's 2 sides of this same story. There's one where you're looking at traffic and impressions and you're super happy because your vanity metrics is what I would call those, is going up, but your phone isn't ringing more and you're not actually growing as a business. The other version of that is you're tracking your vanity metrics, and you're seeing them go the opposite way, but you actually are seeing more phone calls, more leads, and you're on your marketing team incorrectly because you're not looking actually through all of the detail and understanding what's really occurring. So there's really 2 problems here. It's really it's a misunderstanding of the metrics that are being shown in Google Search Console or Google Analytics or whatever platform you're in, and not being able to actually understand what drives value and what is a signal that is just a false positive. What's noise versus signal? Like there's a whole concept of signal versus noise that's talked about. If you are focused on the noise, which is your vanity metrics, and you're not focused on the signal, which is your phone ringing, are your qualified leads going up, are you having more consultations? That's what you should be holding your marketing team accountable. Is phone ringing? Are your qualified leads going up, and are you getting sets? If you're looking at vanity metrics and that's all you're obsessing about, you're looking at the wrong thing, and it's a big trap because you're a lawyer. Like, transparently, like the real harsh truth here is you're a lawyer. You're not looking through this. It would be like me coming in and reading one of your contracts and saying, "Oh, well, this looks wrong." That would be ignorant for me to do that. Correct? So similarly, someone that's been in the marketplace for 15 years that really just studies marketing can tell you something very different, and it might not make sense to you because you're not a marketer. You're a language doctor being a lawyer. We have 2 very different skill sets. So getting caught in this vanity trap, or the super manager that thinks that they're capable of doing absolutely anything, there's a big trap here. And I think asking good questions is important, but the real story here is, what's your signal, which is calls, qualified leads, consults being scheduled, and what's the noise? All of the vanity metrics that a marketing person is going to show you that actually aren't phone calls, qualified leads, and consults being set. If we're not talking about those things, we're talking about something that actually doesn't matter, and it's a vanity metric that might be directionally correct, but it also might be directionally wrong, and it's something that you really need to dig into all of the details to understand. And you might not be that interested in doing it or understand what they're talking about because this isn't what you've been doing for 15 years.
I think the trap that agencies get into, and I know we've been there, is you have this responsibility as an agency to show results and to validate your existence so that you can keep getting paid. And if you're not controlling the entire law firm's marketing funnel, that law firm owner is going to say, well, I pay you X, grand a month, and you're responsible for my website, and my website metrics aren't improving, although my business is growing. And so, what would you say to the law firm owner who maybe has multiple agencies, and the paid agency is saying, "Well, we're winning. We can attribute this many leads to our paid campaigns because there's more data there, uh, and you should really look at SEO because SEO is bleeding." When really it may not be the case. How do you justify that as a law firm owner?
So the first thing that I would want to really challenge a law firm owner is like that false assumption that you can do a one click to one conversion attribution. That's not how the world works. When people, especially in this space, like if you're buying, something that's $50 or less on Amazon, you're still probably doing more research on that one day in multiple different platforms. I know for myself, like last time I bought a backpack, I used Grok to give me here, what are the best backpacks for. I carry my laptop all the time. I have a couple cords. I don't want it to be super heavy. I want it to be easy to travel with. So like I gave it a whole bunch of different information. It gave me a list of different backpacks and then places that I could go buy them. And then I went and looked around. So if the attribution is I clicked through a paid ad on Amazon, now it's working. There was no attribution to what the actual research I did in Grok, right? So this false assumption that you can do single layer attribution or single click attribution is such a falsity. And that's for a backpack that doesn't really matter. Just imagine the different level of research that's happening for a divorce or for any type of legal case in general. It's a very different story. It's a multi-attribution journey. And if you don't understand that, you're going to really struggle to grow your firm, period. So, but if you're stuck in there, if you're stuck in that mindset, and that's like you're going to say, he's full of shit. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm doing that last click attribution, and that's what matters. Okay, fine. If I were you and I were managing just an SEO company, I'm saying, how can I prove my SEO team's value? I would not be looking at total traffic. I would be looking very, very, very specifically at what are the keywords that actually drive conversions that we can try to say are last click attribution opportunities. And that's a very small
near me.
Yeah, it's a very small subset of keywords that are going to show in your Google Search Console platform. So you might have 10,000 impressions per day. The ones that matter that you should be tracking are probably closer to 1,500, 12 to 1,500. So it might be 10%, but you're going to get reports on all of the other stuff. And you're going to say, oh, they're winning. They're winning for me because it keeps growing. And you could have traffic that's growing and your primary keywords falling. Now that's not necessarily the full story though. So, but if that were how I would be looking at it from an SEO perspective, that would be something I'd be looking at. On the paid channel perspective, far too often we're not measuring important things. Like one thing that everybody should measure is how much of my offline data is getting into my online platform. So it's a report that you probably never get, but you go into your Google Ads platform, you click goals, you click summary, and you see literally how many conversions went back into the platform that were offline. Because if it's zero, you're not optimizing for anything. Google's guessing. So is your agency. And like they're hoping what they're doing is working. It's all hope. And if hope's your strategy, I don't want to be on that. I don't want to be on that boat or on that journey. So there's a bunch of different sub metrics that I would be looking at that are going to be more leading indicators on how well am I doing. So like on the one for organic, I'm probably actually not looking at impressions or traffic. I'm looking at the ranking number, because the ranking number is going to tell me when I'm visible for this primary keyword, am I actually visible? Because if I'm outside of the top 5 for that keyword, nobody's seeing my organic search result. When's the last time you scrolled all the way to the bottom of Google's first page and actually clicked on anything? You don't do it. You do a search, you look at the AI review, you then look at maps, and you look at the first 2 or 3 listings. And if you don't find what you look for, you go back to the top, you query something else, and you do it again. Like that is the behavior that actually occurs. So if you're ranked number 9 or you're on page 2 at 10, 11, 12, you're not getting anything. There's no win there. So it doesn't even matter that your impressions might be going up, because if you're not ranking, you're not being seen.
100%.
So there's a whole bunch of these different ones. And this is why the vanity metrics don't matter, because if you don't understand how all of this correlates into actually driving phone calls, qualified leads, and consultation sets, you're going to get lost in this vanity metrics trap, and it becomes really complicated. But unless you like spent time in this space and really understand how this whole thing actually works, you might be chasing your tail, and then you catch it, and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do now.
Or I'm in the same place I was, and
nothing.
I've gone through 5 agencies because
you're a dog chasing a fire truck, and when you catch it, you don't know what to do. You're like, oh, I got the thing. Nothing occurred. I was that person at one point. When we went into Chicago, I didn't understand this as much as I do today. We ranked first in the maps in Chicago, downtown in the Loop, first organically for Chicago divorce lawyers. Guess what happened to my business? We hardly saw any growth. And Chicago divorce lawyers is a massive keyword. There's tons of traffic there, but I didn't actually understand what was going on in that space, because in Chicago, especially in downtown Chicago, the buyers are in like an 8 to 12 block radius. So it didn't matter that I dominated on the first keyword. I was way too far away for anybody that wanted to actually use my service. They weren't going to travel in Metro Chicago to come to my office, which was literally in the Loop, one of the harder parts to get to. They weren't going to do it. And the demographics of the Loop, it's a reverse bell curve. So you have a lot of people that don't have a lot of money, and then a ton of people that have a lot of money, and none of the buyers are the buyers that buy online are right in the middle, and they didn't exist. So like I didn't understand all of that, but I did after we went there and learned the lesson. So there's a whole bunch of these things that make a big difference. So you might be dominating on a keyword, you might be doing really good things, and you might not be seeing any results, just like I experienced when we went to downtown Chicago. This is like part of the game that you gotta, if you really want to play it, you have to understand it, or you have to find someone that you trust that understands the game.
100%. I think we talk a lot about what not to track. Our second point is the waterfall that we kind of invented and that we use for all of our clients is the answer to what to track. So give us a little perspective on the actual metrics that matter for a firm and what they should look at on a daily basis.
Yeah. So I've mentioned them multiple times already. So what I would be looking at is how many inquiries am I getting? So that's phone calls and web leads. How many of those are qualified using a very a limited amount of qualification? So are they in my practice area? Are they in my location? And the third one we use is we don't ask them, do you have money? That would be pretty not great for a phone call, but we listen for things like, are they on disability? Are they on, are they on any welfare programs? Are they mentioning any of these things that really signal oh, you are very likely not going to be able to afford my service? We don't necessarily kick them all out, but that's how we qualify leads. It's practice area, location, and they didn't give me one of the what we call our red flag scripting. They didn't give me one of the red flags. So those are qualified leads. So inquiries, calls, and web leads. Qualified leads, how many of those got through that 3-step process? That's very simple. And then how many got set? Those 3 numbers, that's how you should be measuring your marketing team. And if you're not measuring them that way and you're worried about what's my impressions or what are my clicks or what's my, pick a metric that's in one of these platforms that you could chase all day long, you're likely not going to be getting, you might accidentally be getting an increase in these things. But if you don't know why, you haven't achieved anything and you can't repeat it, which means you can't grow. You just got to hope you just accidentally stumble upon the next thing that actually won. So
yes,
those 3 would be something I would look at.
Family law isn't like other practice areas. Your callers are not shopping for a service. They're looking for someone who makes them feel safe enough to share the worst thing happening in their life. The firm that hears them first wins every time. And that's what changed everything at Sterling.
We eventually built that system into 4 actionable steps. On this free training, Mary Sankey, who leads our sales team, is going to break down the entire 4-step sales system. She is Sterling's sales manager. She's the one who runs it every single day. So go ahead and register below for the sales secrets of an $18 million family law firm. I'll see you there.
So, Tony, I know you gave us a few metrics there. I think it's hyper important that our listeners understand that there are about 8 key metrics that you should track every single day, every week, every month that is going to give you visibility into the health of your firm and the health of the marketing as it relates to your firm. We just completed a webinar on this. We called it How to Moneyball Your Law Firm. You can check that out online. But if you are listening to this, please write these down. These are the 8 metrics that you have to track for your firm's health.
Yeah. So the first one is users, or that's what we call it. It's not necessarily only users that are on your website. Another way to think about this is visibility. So when someone does research in an LLM like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, they're going to give them recommendations on who could help with that potential problem, right? And then you're going to see some sort of like LLM visibility. That would be included. People that are coming to your website would be included. People that see you in Google Maps but never interact with your website would be included. If you're doing any billboards, people that are seeing your billboards would be included. So like this is really a visibility metric. That's really the way to think about it. We call it users. So these are the number of unique people that saw your marketing, that engaged with your brand. So that would be the first one. The second one is inquiries. So these are the people that had awareness that we talked about in the first bucket and then actually took an action. They called or they filled out a web form. It's really simple. And like this is where it like gets way simpler. And you can see all of this stuff in your internal data with your call system and your CRM. So like it becomes way easier once you kind of get into this space. And like that's the point. This should be simple and easy to track. So that would be the next one is what are your total inquiries? The third is going to be how well are you responding to those inquiries? So like your response rate, which is going to lead to qualification, right? So if you're not responding well, which means answering the phone, responding in the first 5 minutes of a web lead, those unanswered calls or those unresponded web leads, they just become waste. You're not likely to get a hold of them. And they essentially, even though they came in, they took an action, that they're now moving on from you because you did not treat them with a high level of customer service in their journey, right? Like they want you to answer the phone. They want you to respond. You preferably respond less than 5 minutes in the first 15 seconds. That's really hard. It's impossible. 5 minutes should be your standard on web inquiries. But then you're going to qualify. So like how many qualified leads came from that bucket of people that took an action? We talked about that a little bit. And then your fourth one in the top section would be how many sets did you get? How many people went from qualified to a set consultation? So those are the top 4. And then the bottom 4, they continue to get even easier. So you have how many of the sets showed, how many of the shows received what we call received a quote or received some material from you, physically received something from you after the consultation. So don't let them leave without actually receiving a contract, even if it's just a retainer agreement. Give them one so they have something. Don't let them leave and be like, oh yeah, I'll come back and talk to you later. They're not going to come back and talk to you later. And like when you hand them something, whether you hand it to them in their inbox in their email, or you literally hand it to them in the office, your conversion rates are going to go up. So shows, people that received your information, and if we hand out folders at Sterling, so like they get a whole folder with a retainer agreement in the folder, but there's marketing material in there. They put that in their car. It just hangs around, and that's the point. It's going to hang around on a desk. I got business cards from DealCon that I was just at. They're still on my desk. That was over a month ago. That's what happens. That's why you want to hand them something. And then it's how many of those people that were handed something funded an agreement. How many turned into a case hire? So, and then the last one on here is how much did that journey cost? So how much did it cost you as a firm to pay for the marketing, to pay for the intake, the people that are answering the phones and responding to the inquiries? How much did that cost versus your total case hires, so that you can manage that cost number to a healthy number? Because if there's no ROI in it, you just spent a whole bunch of money and did a lot of work for nothing. That you didn't actually achieve anything. You just maybe broke even or lost a little bit of money. So we want to know what the ROI of that cycle of interaction is.
This is so important. And this doesn't have to be a fancy dashboard. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like, you could do this in Excel. The point is that you're going through the exercise and you're measuring these 8 metrics every single week, every single month on a regular basis, and you're looking for trends. Because if you do it correctly, you're going to start to figure out that there's bottlenecks in your firm, right? Maybe you do have enough leads, but maybe your intake team is overloaded and they're not picking up the phone in the right amount of time, or they're not calling people back within a certain amount of time. Having the awareness and the visibility is step 1. Step 2 is identifying the issue and then doing something about it.
Yeah. And why this is important is I've been doing internet marketing. I've been on the internet and doing marketing for about 15 years. I can tell you what was working 15 years ago is not the same things that work today. And if I was obsessed with some vanity metric that was just tied to stuff I knew way back then, and the world continued to shift, there's going to be a massive decay because my information is old. And I'm going to be wondering, like, what's happening in my business? This thing that I thought was so precious and perfect, it's going down. Like, this is one of the things we see all the time. We track this like pretend metric that isn't any of the things we were just talking about, and the businesses then don't grow. But that metric stays good. The metric's great. What happened? The world changed. Like, what do we think is happening right now with AI? It's massively impacting how marketing is working. So if you're obsessed with all of the old metrics, and that's all your agency is talking about is all of the old metrics, and they're not talking about what's actually happening in your business, you're working on a strategy that's 3 or 4 years old, and the world is like advancing really fast in a different direction, and you're not actually seeing you're not actually like paying attention to what is actually having an impact because you're obsessed with this vanity metric that doesn't matter. So it's so important to like track this stuff because this stuff is real. These things pay your bills for you and your family and your owner's take home, and it pays for your employees, and it pays for everything. That's what these metrics pay for. Your vanity metric doesn't pay anything to anyone. Nothing happens with it. So if it doesn't produce any of the things we just talked about, you're not making any money. And I think you're all in business to make some money. Even if you're a nonprofit, you're not spending money on marketing to get nothing back. That would be irresponsible. So it's just super important that you track the right things, and you'll see different results as a result of tracking the right things.
100%. I mean, that brings us right into our 4th point, which is like your agency owes you revenue attribution, not ranking reports. If you are just getting reports from your agency that are vanity metrics, clicks, impressions, you're missing the whole picture. And so pushing your agency and asking more difficult questions or the harder questions to say what's actually happening from the work that you're doing, and is it translating to revenue, is the right conversation to be having.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't mean ignore all of those potential leading indicators, but as you see the leading indicators change, but the real metrics not change or change positively or change negatively, like maybe there's an underlying potential there that the assumption you've made that the metric that you've asked them to track that they're sending to you is old and outdated. And like this space evolves very quickly. Like Google does algorithm updates 4 times a year. That messes with how things rank 4 times a year, just in the Google platform. Google AdWords makes lots of updates. They usually do about 1 to 2 new releases every year in terms of how it changes the whole platform. Meta ads, same thing. So there is change constantly. And if you're not updating your whole knowledge set on how that works, and like, oh, I used to ask them to track this whole thing changed. Is that still a good assumption? Yes or no? If you haven't gone through that analysis process, you might be making some big assumptions, and then you might see you will very likely see very different results down funnel. We see this all the time.
So well said.
I was this whole Chicago story. This was me. Like this is exactly what I did, and it doesn't necessarily produce results.
It's real feedback from a real mistake. It's big. Okay, final point is you have to connect all of your systems so that you can get the data. And this is something that we see all the time where clients come in and say, yeah, I have a CRM, or yeah, I'm doing call tracking, or yeah, I have, an AdWords campaign that the last agency set up, but none of it's talking to each other. And so you're getting all these different data points and you're not able to see the whole picture. From your perspective, Tony, what is the perfect kind of setup and what should our clients take away from that?
I don't know if there's a perfect setup, but I would minimum want to see the metrics that we talked about. I would want to start really understanding and seeing where am I visible, like where is my visibility in all of those different channels that we discussed, so that I can see like what's the conversion, what is my overall conversion of visibility to action in the marketplace, and then I know like as I'm growing my visibility in this channel, is it producing more action or not? Because it might just be wasted investment. So like that's generally what I would want to be tracking, is kind of the 8 metrics we talked about through the lenses that we described. And then asking questions like what happened with our visibility is down, but we actually aren't seeing anything negatively being impacted by our funnel downstream. Like we're still seeing the same amount of calls, same amount of qualified leads, same amount of sets. What's happening there? Why? What is happening there? And if like your agency isn't working on and thinking about those things and bringing that information to you, you're likely not working with someone that's really paying attention and having your best interest in mind. Like a lot of what's happened, especially since towards the end of 2004 or 2024 through 2025, and it's still happening today, is traditional organic search visibility is very different, but it isn't necessarily impacting businesses negatively because they're just moving. The visibility is moving from one platform to the other, because a lot of the AI platforms, they are using Google, who has the best data set for what exists on the internet. They're scraping and querying all of that, and that's how they're then producing results in the LLMs, in ChatGPT, in Claude. So as you might be seeing visibility shrink in your Google Search Console, you're likely not looking at a new visibility metric that should be in front of you, which is like, how visible am I in the AI platforms? So not everybody's using AI yet. So I'm not saying like just switch over there and then everything will be fixed. But like that's a new channel that is continuing to grow, and it's going to continue to grow massively over the next several years. So there's just there's things that constantly shift and change, and the speed at which they shift and change is not predictable. We don't get, as an agency, we don't get notified when Google makes an algorithm update. There's no like, oh, okay, guess what, guys? There's a product launch happening on March 15th. Everybody watch. That's not how it works. So typically we know after we get a report from one of the blogs we follow that tracks volatility in the search rankings, and then Google will confirm or kind of suggest nonchalantly that, oh yeah, we kind of made a tweak here, but a lot of their updates aren't even named. Like they won't tell you exactly that they made an update, but it's really clear you did something, because these search results are all over the place now. Like they're very different than they were before. So the main point is, if you're not continuing to evolve how you're looking at these different things, you're likely going to get stale information that we would call vanity metrics.
Love it. So good. Now that you know how to measure whether your SEO is actually working, but the real question is, what happens when the numbers look right and the results still don't come? In our next episode, we are tackling the 2026 visibility crisis, the structural shift that's breaking old SEO models, and what firms have to do to stay visible when AI changes everything. This is happening in real time. And so if you missed our last episode where we broke down the 90-day SEO process roadmap and what to actually do in the first 3 months, go back and watch that one, because it sets the foundation for everything that we covered today. Tony, thank you so much for your time. Really excited to continue this conversation.